Hey everyone, it's been a while. Do you all remember that video that I made about 8 to 9 months ago about a puzzle map that I created in Halo Reach's Forge mode about 10 years ago? And you were all like, oh, this map sucks, it's way too hard, I can't believe you thought anyone would figure this out, where are all the Destiny videos?
You suck!
Well, not too long ago, Halo Reach's Forge mode got added to the Master Chief Collection on PC. And with that, 343 upped the item budget from 10 to 30,000 and added a whole bunch of new items to play around with. So with that, I had the great plan to make another puzzle map. This time, of course, carefully listening to feedback and making it a lot easier and more straightforward to complete. I'm just kidding, of course. This one is way harder. Again, it's not going to be an obstacle course though. It doesn't have over-the-top jumps. Maybe a couple of difficult jumps, but nothing crazy. And to prove that, I even forced Dani through it, who had never touched a Halo game before.
Alright, here we go, the jumping.
Yeah.
This is gonna be another train wreck. Nah, you're getting better.
Grab me!
Oh no!
Okay, okay.
Wait, I got...
You were teabagging in the air. You need to hold down crouch. Oh no, you're teabagging in the air.
Okay, stop. Okay, let me try this. Okay. Oh no, I jumped into the wall. Why did you put that wall there?
Yes, it's the wall's fault.
And if she can do the jumps, I think it is safe enough to say that the jumps are easy enough. Instead, just like the last map, this one's all about the puzzles. And it's also, again, a 2-player co-op map. So if you want to play it, and I wouldn't see why you would, but if you want to play it, and if you want to try it for yourselves, you'd need a friend to do that. I left a link below in the description box with the 2 files that you'll need, the map itself, and then also the game type, which is just a simple Oddball variant with infinite time. And you can just copy these files and save them in this directory on your PC. Xbox players, you're in luck because you will not be able to play this map. The file share system does not work yet on PC, so I cannot actually upload the map to my file share, but if 343 ever fixes that, and I doubt they will, I don't think that's gonna happen, but if they ever fix it, I will definitely update the description of this video with a link to the file share for the Xbox players. Now, the last map was separated into 5 rooms, 5 different rooms that players had to beat. And this one is not like that at all. This one I built it as one big open area with many different rooms and challenges that you can all sort of go to whenever you want to. It's still a linear map, you still have to do it in a certain order, but at least you get to explore the rooms a little bit that are all centered around this giant lava pit, 6,000 feet under the ground. That's where the name of the map comes from. But of course, the reality is that I built it all in the Colosseum, so it's not actually under the ground. Or, I mean, I guess it is. But saying that it was built in the Colosseum makes it a lot less exciting, right? Anyway, if you want to learn more about obscure Halo mechanics that you'll probably never have to think about again, and how I used them to put this map together, then I guess we'll start with the walkthrough part of this video now. And if that doesn't sound like something you're interested in, then I don't know what you're doing watching this video. So let's begin. The moment that you load up into this map, you'll spawn in what we'll call the main room. This will be the only room where players will ever spawn. There will not be any spawning checkpoints, there will not be anything like that. This is the only room where you spawn in, and this room will actually be quite an important part to beating a lot of the challenges, even though you can't really do much here at first. It is fairly small, but there are a lot of different elements to it, such as this dead pit, which you're not able to get into because it's too tight.
What are you doing, Steph?
We also have this hole in the wall, tiny little hole in the wall, leading all the way to the middle of the map. And we also have this metal plate in a vent up top, which is blocked off by a one-way shield in the ceiling and a trip mine. And of course, then we have an energy sword in the middle of the room and another vent on the side that drops you down into another room. As you drop down, you can go 2 ways. You can go into the left room, which just leads to a blocked teleporter, and also, you get to see the oddball from here. I left it there so that players can see it right from the start without actually being able to grab it. But then on the right side you have that cannon man that goes straight over the lava pit that I showed earlier, and that's actually where we need to go. Besides these first 2 rooms, there are a lot of other rooms, and I color-coded those in the game. We've got the green room with a tree, we've got the blue room, orange room, purple room, and these colors don't really matter, it's just to allow players to better call out where they are or orientate themselves. And I guess for the video purpose, it's a little bit important to kind of describe where players need to go at what time. So that's what this is. And to start things off, both players have to go to the green room with the tree, which has a whole bunch of different elements. We have a room with a one-way shield that you can't really get into. You have a hole in the floor that's barricaded off with a pallet and a shield door. We've got a mongoose behind a one-way shield that you also can't get. And then we have this fountain thing with blocks coming out of the wall that lets you jump up into the blue room. Only one player can get up into the blue room with these blocks though, because you'll need to jump off your friend's head in order to make the jump. But those are basically the elements that are in the green room, and I just wanted to put that out there because it's going to be very important to describe the future puzzles that are coming up. Anyway, first step is to obviously help your friend get up into the blue room by letting him jump off of your head. And once he's up there, he should see a little hole into the floor that looks straight down into that vent on the bottom. He's able to shoot an explosive, which will then open up the bottom door with that pallet, which allows the player on the bottom to get through. This is where the first puzzle starts. So we've started doing puzzles now.
Man, hurry the fuck up, dude! Put your fucking fat...
Once the player is inside, he will see another closed door with a pallet, and this time the player up top cannot let him through. So he's kind of stuck there, except for the fact that he can grab the mongoose through a window above him and drive it back into the green room. I think most players know this, but vehicles in Halo can be boarded through any solid surfaces as long as the wall or the floor isn't too thick.
Another beautiful day at the Krusty Krab.
It works with turrets as well, and that's why the player can just grab the mongoose through the glass ceiling. Now that the bottom player has the mongoose, he can use this to get himself up. Now how would you use the mongoose to get up in this room where there's only a couple platforms to jump off of? Well, we can do that by making use of the fountain right in the middle. If you place the mongoose right about here in the fountain and then get off of it, it will start bouncing up in the air and then float upwards towards the wall. The reason that this happens is because of two weird mechanics. The first one is the quote-unquote water. It's not actually water, of course. It's a normal shield door. And shield doors in Halo Reach are just what they sound like. They are just these big shields that are meant to block bullets and projectiles, but they let players and players on vehicles through just fine. Although for some reason, they actually repel unmanned vehicles. So if you were to park your mongoose on a shield door that's placed 90 degrees on the floor, it will actually start bouncing up. That's how the mongoose starts bouncing. And then what causes them to gravitate towards the wall are these tin cups that I've placed into the wall. I showed this off in my last video as well, but the tin cups actually attract vehicles as well as golf balls. This is because in the code of the game, the golf ball is listed as a vehicle without any seats, and the developers wanted to make it easier for players to land their golf balls into these tin cups. So these tin cups, they attract the vehicles, I guess. This is what causes the mongoose to stay in the air, and also allows the second player to jump up to it, flip it, and then use it as an extra platform to jump into the blue room.
Oh my god. I'm trying to create a YouTube video here. Holy shit. See guys, this is why it takes me so long to make a video. This is the reason.
Now the blue room is once again filled with a whole bunch of things, but we're gonna ignore most of those for now because I don't want to describe every room with all its properties without actually needing to do anything there yet. And instead, both players have to walk to the back of the blue room where you'll find this shield floor with 3 corners at the end. 3 things that you have to do there. There's a hologram up top on the left side. There's a needler rifle behind this panel in the middle. And there's also a locked fusion coil door on the right side with a hole above it that you also cannot get through. There's nothing special about this room other than the fact that the floor has a one-way shield pushing down, which means that once players get on top of it, they are not able to jump again, because technically they're touching the one-way shield, and the one-way shield is constantly trying to push them down. This makes it a little difficult to get to the hologram, which is the item that we'll need for the next step in the puzzle. But it's not too difficult to overcome because, of course, you can just have one player stand in the middle of the floor and then have the second player jump off his head onto the platform with the hologram. I think most players could have come up with this. This puzzle starts off pretty easy. This is where it gets pretty interesting though, once we have the hologram. Because once one player has the hologram, the other player can just die. You can have your friend kill you, or you can drop down in the pit. And then the player with the hologram has to go and stand on this crate. It's important that he aims at the hole above this door in this blue room. and then jumps and activates the hologram at sort of the right time, so that the waypoint of the hologram goes all the way to the end of the room. Some players may already know this, but the Halo Reach hologram can actually walk through one-way shields just fine, which would of course normally block players. This usually doesn't happen because as the player activates the hologram, it will only go as far as the thing that he's pointing at. So if the player is looking at the shield and activates the hologram, then the hologram will just walk all the way up until the shield. But because we're aiming in a gap in the ceiling here that goes behind the one-way shield, technically our point is behind the one-way shield. And because of that, the hologram will walk right through it, allowing it to get into the room while players can't. As soon as the hologram walks in, it will trigger the trip mine that is holding up the metal plate, and as soon as that goes off, the metal plate falls back into the main room, where the player that died can then do something with it. The goal from here is to push the metal plate into that little dead pit that we couldn't get into before, so that the player up top from the blue room can drop down into it and stay alive. Now you're probably looking at this and thinking, hey, I don't need this metal plate. I can just stand there, no problem, because there's already objects there. I can just stand here, here, or maybe here. But you'd be wrong to think that. Because the items that I use to make these edges that you're looking at right now are teleporter frames, and I use these for a specific reason. Not because it's going to teleport the player away as soon as he drops down, because these teleporters are not assigned to a channel, so they don't do anything. But the reason I use these is because teleporter frames don't have collision with players. This is so that it is easier for players to go through back and forth through teleporters without constantly bumping into the little thingies on the floor, the little teleporter frames, I guess. But in this case, it means that if a player wants to drop down into the dead pit, he will fall right through him and simply die. To prevent this from happening, we of course have to use the metal plate. We just punch it in there, and the teleporter frames don't have collision with players, but they do have collision with other objects. So that's how that works. The teleporter frames are going to hold up the metal plate, and then the metal plate is going to hold up the player, which allows him to stay in there and not die. The next thing is going to require a little bit of timing. That is, once the player has dropped down into the hole and is basically waiting there, sitting there with his hologram. He's going to point and aim through the little hole in the starting room, and he's going to activate his hologram, which is going to cause his hologram to fall straight down through the metal plate into the dead pit, and not only survive, but also walk forward to the point where the player has been aiming. And in this case, that means that the hologram is going to walk all the way to the edge of the bridge in the middle of that dead pit. Once the hologram is in place, the second player can then go into the cannon man that shoots him from one side of the pit to the other side of the pit, and use the hologram to break the momentum that he got from the cannon man by hitting it with a melee mid-air. The hologram does, just like real players, have some sort of auto-aim and lock-on features to it, even though it's not a real target. And if a player is close enough to it and performs a melee, it will actually lock the player right on, and that's what's going to break this fall, or not fall, but it's going to break the momentum. Once the second player is on the bridge, he'll be able to take a gravity lift up, cross another bridge, and shoot the fusion coil that was blocking the receiver node from the teleporter that we talked about at the start. You know how at the start when we dropped down we could go either left or right, and left was just a room with a block teleporter? Well, that teleporter is unlocked now, so the second player can also get to this room. And this also marks the first checkpoint in the map, I guess. Congratulations to anyone making it this far, but unfortunately, your journey has just begun, and it's about to get a whole lot crazier.
It sucks, man.
To start off the next part, we'll need to get the mongoose again. Yes, you'd think that, hey, we unlocked the checkpoint, we need to do something in this purple room that we just unlocked. And while that's true, you'd also need the mongoose for this part, so you'd have to go back a little bit. First up, you get the mongoose. But this time we will not be using it to get another player up into the blue room right away. Instead we want to drive it somewhere over in the orange room near this window, so that we can grab it later, and then use it in just a couple minutes. You see, for this next challenge we are going to need the players to separate a little bit. One player needs to be on the top part of the purple room, and the other player needs to be in the blue room. Now we already know how to get a player into the blue room. We just jump off each other's head, or we use the mongoose, and that's actually why we needed to get a mongoose. But to get into the purple room, you also need your friend, because your friend needs to block the teleporter that we just unlocked, so that you can die, respawn, walk through the hallway with the teleporter, and then go up a staircase to drop into it from above. If you do this, you will go into the teleporter with enough momentum to come out launching upwards to the other side, which will allow you to go to the top of the purple room. That's how you get there. And of course, in isolation, neither of these challenges are very difficult. Jump off of each other's head or block the teleporter for your friend. But the problem is that you can only do one of these at the same time, because obviously after helping your friend up into the purple room, he then cannot go back to the blue room and help you get up there, because that means he has to leave the purple room. So that's why we needed to get the mongoose. You first get the mongoose, then you park it next to this window in the orange room, which connects it to a tube in that purple room. Then one player stands on the teleporter exit to block it, the other player gets off the mongoose and kills himself, respawns, walks through the teleporter, drops into it from above, and as he drops down to it from above, the other player leaves the receiver node, drops down into the vent that connects the purple and the orange room, and quickly gets on the mongoose. This means that one player will be launched into the top of the purple room, and the other one can simply use the mongoose to get up to the blue room himself. This is how you get both players on the locations that they need to be. Now in this purple room there are a lot of items that we'll need later on into the map. We've got this bubble shield that's blocked off, we've got a concussion rifle that's also blocked off, we have a hole with a trip mine that you also cannot get into, but we also have this small wooden pallet, and this pallet, this is what we'll need in order to beat the next challenge. So the player in the purple room has to move this pallet across one of the bridges, the one that connects the purple with the blue room, and the other player, as he's already in the blue room, then has to catch the pallet. Or he doesn't necessarily have to catch it, he just has to kind of grab it and push it into the blue room to make sure it doesn't disappear. Because if he's not there, the pallet is going to despawn and then respawn. Once the player in the blue room has the pallet, the player in the purple room then makes his way back to the green room and then uses the mongoose to get up into the blue room with the other player. The player in the blue room might have to open the door for him again with that little vent hole. But what's most important is that the player in the blue room keeps pushing this pallet back and forth around the room. Because if he doesn't do that, then the pallet is actually gonna despawn and respawn. You don't want to leave this pallet unattended. Once your friend made it up top using the mongoose, using that same trick by bouncing the mongoose up and then getting on it himself, we're now gonna have a slightly more advanced version of the double jump we did earlier to get to the hologram. For this one, you have to slide the pallet under the gap in the middle corner in that one-way shield room. And this way, your friend can jump off of your head, jump over the little gap, and then land on the pallet, which then allows him to enter the room with the needler rifle. The reason that we need the pallet for this is because if the player were to just land in that room without the pallet being there, he would be stuck because he would be dragged down by the one-way shield and he wouldn't be able to enter the room with the needler rifle. But because the pallet is there, the player is a little more elevated, and this small amount of elevation is enough to separate the player from the one-way shield to make sure that the one-way shield is not in range anymore, which means that the player in this case can just jump up and can easily get the needler rifle. There's one problem though. You can't really get it out of the room because the drop down is a little too far. So to actually get the needler rifle to the rest of the map, the player that's inside will have to die. And then as the needler rifle drops, the other player can pick it up from below. So what do we do with this needler rifle? Well, we need to get it into the purple room, because the purple room also has this section with the concussion rifle that was locked off. But that room happens to have a small slit. A sort of small slit into the wall, which we can use to shoot the needler rifle projectiles through. The needler rifle is a very unique weapon in Halo Reach because it's one of the only weapons that can ricochet rounds at a very high angle. So with the needler rifle we can sort of shoot against the wall and then hit the fusion coil and the trip mine from almost like straight on, which allows us to open the door. The only problem is of course getting the needler rifle there. But that's actually not that hard, and in fact the map supports 3 different ways that you can do this because of its open-ended nature. For this video I'll demonstrate the easiest way to do it, and that is actually very simple: to have one of the players die, respawn into the main room, push that pallet into the dead pit again, and then have the player with the needler rifle simply fall in and die, only so you can repeat the exact same trick you just did by passing the weapon along to the player in the main room, so that you can then bring it with you into the teleporter that leads to the purple room. Of course, you do have to have your friend blocking the teleporter before you go in, because you need that momentum to launch yourself up. Once you do your thing and deflect the bullets, you can get the concussion rifle. And this marks our second checkpoint because this door that allows you to get the concussion rifle remains open permanently. And of course the concussion rifle is also a weapon that gives players a huge mobility boost by shooting it at the floor at the same time that you jump, which allows you to get to places without the help of a friend or without the help of a mongoose.
Oh wow, look at that, you actually did it. Oh, thank God for that, Jesus Christ.
And we'll get to the concussion rifle jumping for sure, but for this next bit we're actually not going to do that. We're actually going to use it to push the mongoose into the blue room. So same trick as you did before, you have one player go up to the blue room, you unlock the mongoose, you put the mongoose on the shield, it starts bouncing, it starts going up against the tin cups. But this time, instead of using it as a platform, you get underneath it with the concussion rifle and you shoot it up from below. And because there are many tin cups in the wall, the mongoose will stick to the wall and just go up and up until it's all the way at the ceiling. And then the player that's above can flip the mongoose and get on it, and now you have the mongoose in the blue room. Then the player from below can use the concussion rifle to jump across by himself. And then, once he's up there, he needs to give the concussion rifle to the other player and die to respawn in the main room and push that metal plate into the gap for one last time. Because some of you might have already guessed it, but we're gonna drive this mongoose into the vent, onto the metal plate, and then we can actually fit it under the gap into the main room. Because yes, we might not be able to crouch under this gap in the main room to fall into the dead pit, but the mongoose can actually drive right through. This is because when you get on a vehicle in Halo, you actually only have the hitbox of that vehicle, not the vehicle plus the player. And the mongoose is such a small vehicle that you can just drive it under places where even crouched players can't get to. So that's why you can drive under it with the mongoose, but can't crouch through it. Anyway, it's now time to get the mongoose into the top of the purple room and hit that trip mine that we previously couldn't get to because the gap was too small. The smart viewers might, at this point, sort of already know what's next up because they think, oh, I've already seen this. You just have one player block the teleporter and then you get through it with the mongoose to launch it up into the purple room. Simple enough. And that was actually the original plan for the puzzle. That's when I was designing it on paper, when I was thinking about it. That's what I wanted to do. But then the game just said, no, that's not how it's gonna work. I discovered that it is impossible to block teleporters for the mongoose for some reason. And I don't know if this was always the case in Halo Reach, but it's the case in the MCC version. No matter what you do, you cannot block the teleporter for a mongoose. You could even place a huge block on top of the receiver node and then drive right through the teleporter, and even though there clearly isn't enough space, it still forces the player through and it just pushes you somewhere just to get you through the teleporter.
Think you're smart, huh, game? Trying to ruin my puzzle map and shit? You think I can block a teleporter in Halo? Stupid 343. Let me just place all these blocks and then we're gonna see who can block a teleporter, huh? Yeah, let's see who's winning now, huh? Okay, you win.
So because this part clearly wasn't working as intended, I had to change this part up a little bit. Instead, the player with the mongoose goes through the teleporter first and helps the other player get up there. And then the player with the mongoose down below can use the shield door in the room to make the mongoose bounce, after which you can shoot it up with the concussion rifle to the second player. Either way, once you make it up with the mongoose, you can drive it into that little vent, which will make it explode, and permanently now cause this fusion coil to spawn in and roll down into the bottom of the purple room. And this fusion coil, it might seem like nothing, but this one is going to be key to unlocking so many other parts of the map. Why, you might ask? Well, for instance, because this fusion coil can act as a player blocking the teleporter. So now you will not need your friend to get up into the purple room anymore. What you could do is simply move to the purple room, move the fusion coil over to the teleporter receiver node, kill yourself, and then run over to the teleporter and then wait for the fusion coil to despawn and respawn. This is also how we're going to be getting the concussion rifle by ourselves for the next step. But that's not the only thing. We'll also be putting this fusion coil in a hole that's all the way in this orange room. And we're gonna do that because we needed to unlock a door. Getting it there though, that is the challenge. And that's the next puzzle that players are gonna have to figure out. Because not only is it simply impossible to push the fusion coal there, as it's just never gonna work. You're always just gonna push it into a cliff. But there's also a super big gap in the floor that prevents you from simply sliding it in. So first up, for that hole in the floor, we're gonna use that wooden pallet from the purple room. What we can do with that pallet is actually, if we can get it there, we can just slide it over the hole. And if we have the fusion coal then there, we could put the fusion coal over the pallet and slide it right into the hole in the back. So the pallet is definitely an item that we're gonna need. And to get it there, it's not too difficult. Because from the purple room, you can slide the pallet all the way down into the bottom of the purple room. And then you can slide it down into that vent that connects the purple and the orange room. The same vent that we used for the mongoose earlier. Through that vent, we can also push the pallet into the orange room. So that's simple enough. And then to get the fusion coal into the orange room, well, that's a little bit trickier, but it's also not too difficult because we can use the concussion rifle to sort of push it with a lot of velocity over the gap of the bridge here. The concussion rifle has a lot of explosion radius and does very little damage. So you wouldn't expect it, but if you put the fusion coal on the edge of the bridge here, if you push it all the way out there, and then use the concussion rifle to shoot it across, you can actually get it into the green room. And from the green room, you can get it easily into the orange room. So that's how you get both of those items there. In the original version of the map, I also had a challenge where the player up top with the fusion coil had to use an active camo to push it through a glass window below, and then the other player had to catch it by jumping at the right time to break the fall. But this part was a little bit too inconsistent and frustrating during test playing, so I changed that part of the map and made it a lot easier. Anyway, once that is done, you slide the pallet in, you put the fusion coal on top of it, you slide that in, you shoot the fusion coal, that causes a chain reaction of explosions to open a door that goes to the top of the orange room, which you can use to enter the room with the grenade launcher. This is also sort of where the last part of the map starts, because the grenade launcher is one of the last weapons that you'll need in order to beat this map. But the problem is that the room with the grenade launcher is a room that you cannot get out of. Once you drop down, there is a cannon man and a one-way shield that will push you inside and also push any weapons back inside that you try to throw out. So there's no way that you're getting this grenade launcher out without doing some other stuff first. So, first things first. The grenade launcher room, it's very high on top, the entrance at least. And to get inside that room, you'll need to perform a double jump on top of the mongoose with the concussion rifle, because the entrance is very high up. The thing is that from inside of that room, once you made your way in, you cannot just grab the grenade launcher because it's out of reach. It's in a little gap up top that you can't possibly get by yourself. In order to get that, you will need the concussion rifle as well. But you need the concussion rifle from the outside, because the way that you get the grenade launcher is that you shoot at the grenade launcher from through that same vent that connects the purple and the orange room. You shoot it from there so that it drops down into the room for the other player to get. The thing is though is that once you're inside the grenade launcher room, you cannot drop the concussion rifle unless you die, which is a problem because in order to make the concussion rifle respawn again, you'll need to make it despawn first, which means you have to have it on the floor. So how do you possibly get up in that room with the concussion rifle and then also use the concussion rifle from the outside to make the grenade launcher drop? And this is where I said that it's going to be a little bit time sensitive. You're going to have to do a pretty specific sequence of actions. First up, you get the mongoose again and park it again next to the glass in the orange room. Then have one player get the concussion rifle by himself using the fusion coil to block the teleporter, of course. Then what he can do once he has the concussion rifle is block the teleporter in the purple room, not for himself, but for his friend. He then walks up to the vent, shoots the grenade launcher into the hole, drops down into the vent and gets on a mongoose, and use the mongoose plus his friend to perform a double jump into the room to get the grenade launcher before it despawns and respawns. The second player can then kill himself and move up to the purple room by himself, and now we have both players where we need them to be for the next challenge. So Yes, the player does have the grenade launcher now, but as I said, he's not able to get out of that room. He does, however, have a little vent or a little hole that he can shoot a grenade launcher projectile through. And he's gonna need to shoot that out of the vent in the orange room, through the purple room, all the way to the top to where the other player is supposed to be. He or she can then use the pellet that spawns up there to push the grenade launcher projectile under a slit that will then finally open the door for the bubble shield. And this unlocks the bubble shield. Yes, that was a handful, a mouthful, everything full, but that's what you need to do to get the bubble shield. The reason that this works is that even though there's a shield door blocking any projectiles from going through, for some reason the projectile of the grenade launcher can pass through shield doors a couple of seconds after it has landed on the ground. So while it would be impossible to just shoot the grenade launcher underneath the hole to unlock the door, or use any other weapon, for some reason it is possible to have the grenade launcher projectile be on the ground for a couple seconds and then pushing it in with the pallet that spawns there. With the bubble shield unlocked, we can actually get the player out of that room with the grenade launcher, which would allow us to use it anywhere on the map. For that part, we also again do need the mongoose though, and by this time the mongoose has very likely despawned and respawned, so both players will have to kill themselves and go back to the green room to repeat the process of getting the mongoose again. Yes, you're gonna have to do all of what you just did again.
One time is funny, 2 times is fucking annoying.
So yeah, you're just gonna have to set up everything that you just did. You're gonna set up the mongoose, you're gonna have one player with the concussion rifle shoot the grenade launcher down into that gap, and then use the other player plus the mongoose to shoot himself up into that little room. The difference here though is that once the player has the grenade launcher, he can now walk back up and go into the other vent that leads to this little area with 2 trip mines. Usually, if he would drop down here, he would die because the trip mine explosions, it would kill them. They're on a 1-second respawn timer. But because the player that's outside of that room now has the mongoose and the bubble shield, he can park the mongoose under the trip mines from outside and then get on the mongoose and then place a bubble shield so that the player inside of that room can drop down, and the bubble shield will actually protect the player inside from the explosion from the trip mine. The trip mine does destroy the bubble shield though, and the player down below is going to have to put 2 bubble shields down. But if you do it like that, the player that was stuck in the room with the grenade launcher is now able to actually drop down in the area below, which doesn't have anything interesting, but is low enough to the point to where he can use that mongoose boarding through the wall trick to get out of the room with the grenade launcher. So from this point on, you can have the grenade launcher anywhere on the map, and this is what we'll use to open the very last door, the one that was closed in that event that we saw at the start of the map when getting the mongoose. So what one player can do is put the bubble shield next to a window that connects that vent that allows you to open the door to the mongoose. And once the bubble shield is down, the other player can kind of ricochet the grenade launcher projectile against it, which causes it to go into another vent that will then ensure that it lands next to a fusion coil that can open the next door. Of course, you don't want to instantly explode it because it is on a 3-second timer, so there's no way that you can destroy that door and then destroy the first door to make the other player go through, because there's simply no time for that. So what you have to do here is, once the grenade launcher projectile is in place, you want to drop down and swap roles. So you want to have the other player go up into the blue room, have the other player destroy the first door for you, and then after you have walked through, you can blow up the door for yourself, because the grenade should still be behind that door ready to open it. This vent leads to another fusion coil that you can shoot from below, which will give you the final weapon that you'll need, which is the plasma launcher. And there's only one last step that you have to do with this weapon, and it's actually quite a simple one, because you have to have one player move to the purple room, give you a pallet, and then once you have a pallet, you can shoot the tip of the pallet with that plasma rifle launcher and push the pallet through a little vent that opens the last fusion coil door to the Oddball. I wanted to do more stuff with the plasma launcher for this map, but there were some complications, as I'll talk about soon. So this is the last challenge. This basically drops you down into a vent where you can pick up the Oddball and finish the map. So yeah, that is how you beat this map. That is how you get the big prize, the skull that's on fire. And again, believe it or not, this is not where I wanted the map to end. I had a lot more rooms planned with puzzles that were even harder and more complicated than the ones that I showed here. But yeah, as I said, I ran into problems with objects that would start flickering because I've had placed too many of them and I had to cut it short. It's also the reason why the map doesn't look too good in some places. I had to replace a lot of detailed objects with simpler ones because they were bigger. I hate how Colosseum walls look. They just look so ugly. But I had to use them in quite a lot of places to prevent the map from going crazy with the flickering. I tried to see if I could actually avoid this issue by using less detailed objects in a test map, or by placing objects further apart from each other so that maybe the game would render the lower quality version models. But this doesn't seem to be a polygon issue either, because I just tested a whole bunch of 1x1 blocks. I just tested putting them in the same area, and the flickering issue even persists then. Even when those blocks are not even rendered anymore due to the distance. Like right here, they're not even on the screen anymore because they're too far away. But the game still renders them somehow, and the object flickering issue still persists. It's really strange. It's probably because this game originally came out on the Xbox 360, and for this game they used the same engine that they used as Halo 3, I believe, which came out in 2007. So yeah, it's expected that there are to be some issues, and it just means that I really hope Halo 6 is going to have a killer Forge mode that is going to fix all these issues. I also had the idea to put some sort of contest with a money prize on this map and make it, you know, sort of an event thing where whoever beats it first the legit way gets a money prize. Sort of like I did with the original map 10 years ago with my other puzzle maps, I guess. But I eventually decided to not go through with it because I was not confident enough that this map didn't have any weird exploits. I know the Halo player base can be very creative, and I know that I probably overlooked some things or some ways that some parts of the map could be beaten, and I just didn't want to turn this into a mess where you know, players would get robbed of their win because they used an exploit that I didn't account for, especially because this map, you know, in some cases it requires players to use some unintended mechanics in order to proceed. So that line was very blurry to begin with, and I didn't want to just make it a mess. And I also don't really have a clue how big the audience for this type of thing would still be. Sure, my last video did extremely well. I'm not gonna beat around the bush there, but it could also have just been a one-off thing. I guess we'll see that with this video. It could very well be that people would not want to see more of these type of videos, so I really don't know. The plan for now is if this video does really well again and people would actually be interested in doing this thing and participating in these type of events, then in the somewhat distant future, I'll create another map with all the ideas that I have left over from this map that I couldn't put in, and I will put a contest around it with a little bit of a money prize with the money that I'll make from this video. And if this video does not do too well, then at least I had fun coming up with this monstrosity. So with that, I'm just going to leave you all. I also wanted to say that I have started working on more videos again. Some Destiny 2, of course, and as well as some other things. So make sure to check back in a week for all of that. Or maybe in a month. Or in a year.